I discovered my wife of 10 years was secretly funneling $200 into her affair with her boss, and now he's claiming half our house in a bitter legal battle over our inheritance. Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy who finds out his wife has been secretly funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars into her affair with her boss. It all started with little things: missed calls, late nights, her phone always locked. But I guess I was too blind to see what was really happening beneath the surface. The moment that changed everything was when I stumbled across a bank statement on her laptop. I was just casually browsing her files, trying to clear some space when I saw it. A transfer of $200, $0 to a private account under her boss's name. My stomach dropped. I sat there staring at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing, because I knew instantly that this was just about money. It was about betrayal on a scale I couldn't have imagined. Her name is Jessica and I'm Mark. We've been married for 10 years, and honestly, for most of that, I thought we had a good life. Sure, there were small fights here and there, but nothing that screamed cheating or financial disaster. Jessica's always been the kind of woman who dresses to impress, acts like she's the queen of the world, and throws tantrums if things don't go her way. But I never thought she'd be capable of something so cold and calculated. Seeing that transfer, I felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. I wasn't just angry. I was hurt, confused, and a little afraid. I needed to confront her. But how do you confront someone who's been lying to your face for years? I waited until she came home late from her business dinner, which I now realize was probably the first sign I ignored. When she finally walked through the door, I was sitting on the couch with her laptop in front of me. She looked surprised, maybe even a little guilty, but she quickly masked it with her usual bitchy smirk. "What's going on, Mark? You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, trying to play it off. I didn't hold back. I threw the bank statement in her face and asked her to explain what it was. Her reaction was instant denial, then anger. "That's none of your business," she snapped, her eyes narrowing. "You're overreacting. Maybe I was just saving for a rainy day, or maybe someone else is trying to ruin me." She lied so effortlessly I almost believed her, but I knew better. I'd seen enough now to know that Jessica had been secretly funneling money into her affair with her boss, David. And that wasn't just about the money. It was about her lying, manipulating, and playing me for a fool. The shock hit me hard. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. For 10 years, I built a life with her, trusted her, supported her. And she had been sneaking around, betraying me for who knows how long. I started thinking about all the moments I missed. Her secret late-night calls, her suspicious trips out of town, the way she'd always be defensive when I asked about her phone. It all clicked into place. She had been lying right in my face, and I was too blind to see it. I felt a mixture of rage and sadness, wondering how I could have been so stupid to not see the signs. I didn't want to just sit there and be a victim. I decided I needed a plan, not just to confront her again, but to take control of the situation. I knew she was hiding something bigger, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I started digging through her emails, her phone, anything that could give me more clues. That's when I found out about the extent of her betrayal. More than just the money, she'd been having an affair with her boss, David, for over a year. And that's when everything really started to unravel. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial, legal, and personal. I remember feeling numb, then furious. How could she do this? How could she lie and cheat for so long? And the worst part, she kept lying even when I confronted her. Jessica's words kept coming back to me. "You're overreacting. It's just sex. I love you, but I need this." As if that made everything okay. But it didn't. Nothing about this was okay. The trust was shattered, and I was left with nothing but questions and a sinking feeling that I'd lost my wife, my partner, my best friend. The next step was clear. I had to find out just how deep this rabbit hole went, and I had to prepare for what was coming next. After that discovery, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her lie, her betrayal. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut repeatedly. The anger was boiling inside me, but underneath it all was a deep sense of betrayal that cut even deeper. I knew I needed more evidence, more proof, before I could confront her again. I didn't trust her word anymore. Jessica was good at lying, and I knew I had to be smarter. So I started digging into her financials more, her emails, her phone records, anything that could give me a clearer picture of what she was really up to. I spent the next few days creating a timeline. I found out that she'd been funneling that $200, $0 into an account under David's name, her boss, who, by the way, was a smooth-talking, arrogant bastard. He's about 10 years older than her, and I'd always suspected he was a manipulator, but I never had proof. Now I had cold, hard evidence. That money wasn't just about some secret savings. It was part of a bigger scheme. Jessica was using that cash to pay for trips, fancy dinners, new designer clothes, all the things she'd always wanted but never quite had the money for. And I was just supposed to be okay with that. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her lies went. She'd been telling me she was working late at the office, but I found emails where she was planning trips with David. They'd been meeting in hotels, going out to expensive restaurants, and even buying each other gifts. She told me she was just working on a big project. But now I knew that was bullshit. She'd been having sex with him, probably for over a year, and I had no idea. I felt like a complete idiot for not seeing it sooner. The worst part was how she lied so effortlessly when I confronted her again. I told her I knew everything about the money, about the affair. Her reaction was to get defensive, call me paranoid, accuse me of spying on her. She told me I was imagining things, that she loved me, that David was just a business associate, and that I was overreacting. She even had the nerve to say I was insecure. That made me furious. How could she call me insecure when she's been cheating on me and stealing from us? I was shaking with rage, but I kept my cool. I needed a plan. I decided I couldn't just confront her again without a solid plan. I wanted to catch her in the act, maybe even record her admitting everything. I set up hidden cameras in the house, especially in the bedroom and her office. I wanted to see if she'd slip up again. I also contacted a lawyer, just to understand my options. Jessica had been draining our savings, and I needed to know what rights I had if she was planning to run or hide the money. I wasn't about to lose everything because of her lies. While I was doing all this, she noticed I was acting strange. I could see her suspicion growing. She started accusing me of spying, of invading her privacy. She got bitchy, throwing tantrums about how I was ruining her life. But I didn't care. I knew what she was doing, and I was determined to expose her. I also started secretly recording our conversations, just in case I needed proof. The more I watched her try to cover her tracks, the more I realized she was slipping up. She was careless, overconfident, and that was good for me. One night I caught her on the camera meeting David in a hotel parking lot. They weren't just talking about work. They were kissing, holding hands, acting like a couple. That was the final straw. I felt sick, but also strangely relieved. I finally had what I needed. The evidence was irrefutable. Jessica was not only cheating on me physically, but was also stealing from us to fund her affair. That's when I knew I had to make some serious decisions. I couldn't stay married to someone who had betrayed me so completely. I had to decide whether to fight for the marriage or walk away. But one thing was certain: I was going to make her pay for what she did, no matter what it took. Once I had everything, proof of her affair, evidence of the money transfer, and recordings of her sneaking around, I felt like I was sitting on a powder keg. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with a cold resolve. I knew Jessica was the kind of woman who wouldn't just admit she was wrong or try to fix things. She'd double down, lie her way out, or spin some new story to keep herself afloat. I couldn't let her do that. I had to be smart about how I handled the confrontation. I decided to wait, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to make sure I had everything perfectly lined up. I didn't want her to spin her usual lies, and I didn't want to give her any chance to manipulate the situation. I kept quiet, gathering more details, talking to a lawyer behind the scenes, and preparing myself emotionally for what was coming. Every day, I felt more certain that I'd finally had enough of her BS. This wasn't just a fling or a mistake. This was a full-blown betrayal that threatened everything I thought we had. Jessica, of course, started acting even bitchier. She was more dismissive, more condescending. She'd throw fits if I questioned her about where she was or what she was doing. Her tone was like she thought I was some idiot who could be easily manipulated. She kept lying about her business trips, claiming she was working late or that David was just a colleague helping her with a project. But I knew better. I had seen the messages, the bank transfers, the meetings. She was lying to my face, and I was starting to see how she'd been doing it for months. One night, I finally decided it was time. I sat her down in the living room, my heart pounding. I told her I knew everything about her affair, the money, the lies. Her reaction was classic Jessica. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and tried to act like she was the victim. "You're overreacting, Mark," she said with that bitchy tone. "You always blow things out of proportion. I love you, but I'm not some cheating whore." She looked me dead in the eyes and then started crying, claiming she was sorry that she'd been stressed, that she'd made a mistake, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew I had to be firm. I told her I was done with the lies, the cheating, the stealing. I told her I'd hired a lawyer and that I was planning to fight for everything: our house, the money she stole, whatever she thought she could hide. I made it clear I was not going to be her fool anymore. I'd been a fool for 10 years, but no more. I was tired of her bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations. I was finally putting my foot down. The next day, I started the legal process. I filed for divorce, claiming adultery and financial misconduct. Jessica's reaction was even more bitchy. She accused me of ruining her life, of being paranoid, of trying to punish her. She said I was being unreasonable and that I was just jealous because she had a better life with David. I just looked at her and said, "You're the one who ruined this marriage, Jessica, not me." It felt good to finally say that out loud. But even as I moved forward legally, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I was angry, yes, but also deeply sad. I'd spent a decade building a life with her, thinking she was my partner, my best friend. Now I saw she'd been nothing but a manipulative bitch who used me, lied to me, and stole from us. The money she'd taken, her secret fund for David, was just the tip of the iceberg. She had been trying to turn our entire life into a game she was winning at my expense. In the days that followed, I kept thinking about how I'd let her get away with so much for so long. I realized I'd been too trusting, too blind, but I also learned something. I shouldn't have ignored the small signs, the little red flags. If I had paid closer attention, maybe I could have stopped this sooner. But now I was finally free. Jessica's bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations, they all caught up with her, and I was done playing her game. I was ready to start over, even if it hurt like hell. The legal battle kicked off faster than I expected. Jessica was stubborn, as usual. Her bitchy attitude only intensified once she realized I was serious about divorcing her and fighting for the house. She kept throwing tantrums, claiming I was ruining her life, that I was just jealous of her success with David, and that I didn't understand her true needs. Honestly, I didn't care any more about her excuses. I'd heard enough lies to last a lifetime. My focus was on protecting what was ours and making sure she didn't get away with stealing everything she could. She tried to play the victim, crying and whining about how unfair it all was. But I knew better. That money, her secret stash, was the proof I needed that she'd been planning this for a long time. I had the bank statements, the emails, the recordings. I handed all of it over to my lawyer, who told me I had a strong case. Jessica's boss, David, was also involved, and I knew that if the case went to court, he'd be dragged into it too. I wanted justice, not just for the money she stole, but for the years of lies and betrayal. Jessica's reaction to the legal proceedings was classic. She became even more bitchy, accusing me of trying to ruin her career, her reputation, her life. She called me controlling, insecure, jealous, anything to shift the blame away from herself. She even went so far as to accuse me of abusing her emotionally, which was ridiculous. I just sat there, listening to her spin her stories, knowing that the truth was on my side. The evidence was irrefutable. I had everything I needed to win this battle. Meanwhile, I focused on the financial side of things. I hired forensic accountants to trace every dollar she'd stolen, every penny funneled into her affair. The more I looked into it, the angrier I got. She drained our savings, used our credit cards to fund her trips with David, and even tried to hide some of the money in offshore accounts. I was furious that she thought she could get away with this, but I was determined to make her pay. I wasn't going to let her walk away with our house, our money, or anything else. Jessica's legal team tried to drag things out, filing motions and requesting delays, but I stayed focused. I knew her game: drag it out long enough and she hoped I'd get tired, give up, or settle for less. But I wasn't that guy. I was ready to fight, and I had the evidence to back me up. I also started talking to the neighbors and friends, people who knew her well, just to get a sense of her true character. Turns out she'd been lying to everyone, pretending she was the perfect wife, the hardworking woman. But behind closed doors, she was scheming and manipulating. The worst part was how her attitude affected our daughter, Emma. She's only 12, but she could sense the tension. Jessica was cold and bitchy around her, constantly yelling or dismissing her. I tried to shield Emma from the worst of it, but I knew she was confused. I explained to her that grown-up stuff was complicated, that sometimes people make mistakes, but that her dad loved her and was doing everything to protect her future. I didn't want her growing up thinking her mother was a liar or a thief. That's a pain no kid should have to carry. As the months dragged on, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. I was finally taking control, fighting for what was rightfully ours. But the emotional toll was heavy. Every day, I'd wake up angry, thinking about how Jessica had betrayed me, how she'd lied and stolen from us. I kept replaying that night I found the bank statement, the moment I realized I'd been living with a woman who was more enemy than wife. Still, I knew I couldn't let her see how much she'd hurt me. I had to stay strong for Emma, for myself, and for the justice I was determined to get. One thing I learned through all this: trust is fragile. Jessica shattered mine completely. But I also learned that sometimes you need to fight back, even if it's hard, even if it's messy. I refused to be the victim anymore. I was going to win this, no matter what it took. And I'd come out the other side knowing I'd fought for my family, my home, and my dignity. That's what kept me going through the sleepless nights and endless court hearings. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting to reclaim my life from a woman who thought she could lie her way to the top. The court date finally arrived after nearly a year of legal battles, and I was ready. Jessica's lawyer tried every trick in the book: delays, false accusations, even trying to claim I was emotionally unstable to weaken my case. But I had all the evidence on my side: the bank statements, the emails, the recordings. I knew I was in the right, and I wasn't about to back down. The courtroom was tense, Jessica sitting there with her bitchy smirk, trying to act like she hadn't done anything wrong. David wasn't there, but I knew he'd be dragged in if I pushed hard enough. My lawyer laid out everything: the stolen money, her affair, her lies, and it was like watching her confidence crumble. She tried to deny everything, but her words kept contradicting what I had proven. Her bitchy attitude was starting to crack, and I could see the frustration in her eyes. When the judge finally asked her to explain the $200 transfer, she hesitated, then spun some ridiculous story about a business investment she was planning but never followed through on. That lie, like all her others, fell flat. The evidence was just too strong. The judge wasn't buying her bullshit. After hours of testimony and presentation of evidence, the court ruled in my favor. Jessica was ordered to pay back the stolen money, and she lost her claim to half the house. The judge also ordered her to cover some of the legal fees, which she grumbled about but couldn't argue with. That moment, seeing her bitchy smirk fade into a look of defeat, felt like a small victory. I finally felt like I was taking control of the wreckage she'd caused. But the aftermath wasn't just about winning in court. Jessica's attitude didn't change overnight. She continued to be bitchy, throwing tantrums, accusing me of ruining her reputation. She even tried to claim that I was the one cheating, that I was jealous of David. It was laughable, really, how she kept spinning her lies even as everything was falling apart. I kept my distance, knowing that her bitterness was just her way of trying to regain some control. I refused to get dragged into her toxic game anymore. The most painful part was watching Emma struggle with all this. She didn't understand why her mom was so angry all the time, why she was acting out. I tried to be there for her as much as I could, explaining that sometimes adults make bad choices, but that her dad loved her more than anything. I promised her that I'd do everything to give her a stable life, even if it meant living through this chaos. That girl means everything to me, and I wasn't about to let Jessica's bitchy attitude destroy her innocence. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown through all this. I was naive to think marriage was forever, to think I could trust someone blindly. Jessica's betrayal showed me that people are capable of terrible things when they think they can get away with it. But it also taught me resilience. I fought, I stood my ground, and I refused to be crushed by her manipulations. I learned that sometimes you have to take a stand, even if it's messy, even if it hurts, to reclaim your life. Now, as I start to rebuild, I'm more cautious but also more aware. Trust is earned, not given blindly. I don't regret the fight. I'd do it all over again if it meant freeing myself from her grip. Jessica's bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations, they all serve as a harsh reminder to never ignore the red flags. I've come out of this battered but stronger, and I know I'll never let someone like her do this to me again. The road to recovery is long, but at least now I know who she really is, and I'm finally free from her poison. In the aftermath of everything, I've had a lot of time to reflect. The pain, the betrayal, the anger, it all lingers, but it's slowly transforming into something else. I realize now that Jessica's bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations, they all reveal who she really was behind that superficial mask. I won't pretend it's easy to move on, especially after 10 years of building a life I thought was solid. But I also know that clinging to the past only keeps me stuck in the hurt. The house I fought so hard to keep feels different now. It's not just a building, it's a symbol of what I've survived and what I refuse to let define me. I made the decision to stay in it, not for her, but for Emma, and because I want to rebuild my sense of stability. I've learned that revenge isn't about hurting her anymore, it's about reclaiming my peace and dignity. I don't hate her, at least I don't hate her anymore, but I definitely don't trust her. That trust is broken beyond repair. I've also learned some valuable lessons about myself. Trusting blindly was my mistake, but fighting for what's right was my salvation. I've become more cautious, more aware of red flags, and more committed to protecting myself and my daughter. The financial mess Jessica left behind was a wake-up call. I now understand the importance of being vigilant about money, about who I trust with my life, and about how fragile happiness can be when deception is involved. As for Jessica, I hope she finally realizes the damage she caused, not just to me but to herself. Her bitchy attitude, her constant lies, they're just masks for her own insecurities and failures. Maybe someday she'll understand that her actions only hurt her in the end, but I won't be around to watch her spiral anymore. I've cut ties and I'm moving forward without her. My advice to anyone reading this, don't ignore the signs. If your gut tells you something's wrong, don't brush it off. Trust is a fragile thing, and once broken, it's nearly impossible to fix. Fight for what's yours, your dignity, your peace, your happiness, and never let someone steal your life without a fight. Because in the end, the biggest victory is reclaiming yourself from the chaos they tried to drown you in. I'm still healing, still rebuilding, but I know I'll be okay. I've learned that resilience is the real strength, and no matter how bitchy, manipulative, or sneaky someone is, they can't take away your ability to move on.